We have a massive Lakers free agency update to go over today as Los Angeles Lakers are targeting multiple big men. And in a surprising turn of events, we have some new targets that Rob Pelinka is targeting. But these reports are not only interesting surrounding the big men, but it reveals some huge details surrounding the Lakers' plans going forward. We're going to break all that down in this episode, as well as discuss some other interesting Lakers updates as free agency inches closer and closer. The draft inches closer and closer, and big moves are on the horizon. But before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, about 90% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. You guys have been absolute beasts. So thank you guys for the support over here. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot to go over today. Now, obviously, the Lakers are in a very interesting, part of their offseason. I say that often because it is very true. And they're at a point now where not only are they looking at every single conceivable option, you have Kevin Durant on the verge of being traded. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo. The rumors there are picking up. But we have some new rumors surrounding who the Lakers are actually targeting at the center position. And let's start with Clint Capela. And you can see this here per Anthony Irwin, that Clint Capela is high on the Lakers target board. League sources anticipate yet another tough market for free agents this summer, but it's not so dry that Steven Adams will be available to the Lakers, let alone Miles Turner and Naz Reid. Clint Capela is considered within reach at $5.7 million, and as such is expected to sit pretty high on the Lakers target board. So obviously it's going to be an interesting summer for the center position. Now, I am not sitting here and going to say that Clint Capela will solve any of the Lakers' problems regarding being a starting center. They, of course, have a lot of work to do in the starting center department. I don't think Clint Capela, and I know Clint Capela wouldn't be the main center move that they make. However, as a veteran big man who could really, still is a great rebounder, still a very great defender at the rim, if you're not able to get a guy like Steven Adams or, of course, Miles Turner and Naz Reid, those are the bigger fish that they're going to be trying to get. And, I think Miles Turner, Nick Claxton, those type of, Walker Kessler, even Daniel Gafford, those are the kind of the main 1A targets. If you can get a guy like, and we'll have another discussion in a minute here, a guy like Clint Capela to discuss or to help, for Rob Pelinka to discuss with and really help their team in the backup center position to replace Jackson Hayes, I think it makes a lot of sense for this team, specifically because, Clint Capela is very interesting, and he's I'm not going to say he's a very good center at this point of his career, but he's a very solid center, and that's kind of what you need if you're the Los Angeles Lakers. You need centers that are solid. You need guys who can play their role, and Clint Capela can do that. He's still a lob threat, even at his age in his mid to late 30s, or as he approaches his mid to late 30s. I think his game will age pretty well, but he's in his 30s now, and it's going to be interesting on that front. You can see this here, another article that dropped surrounding Clint Capela, but I want you to leave a comment right now. Do you think Clint Capela will be good as a backup center? Again, this is not a 1A option. They are targeting multiple centers, some via trade, some via free agency. And I think that Clint Capela, especially just given the fact that this market's going to be extremely competitive, and there's not a ton of elite centers available in the free agency market, and there is some available in the trade market. But again, trade market's interesting because things change all the time. You have guys like Nick Claxton, Walker Kessler. When we think back to the Mark Williams trade, it got rescinded, and I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but of course things are more interesting with that. You have Dalton Knecht, who is their Lakers' main number one trade asset. But you see the report here that dropped: Lakers eyeing long-time target as offseason plans take shape. The lack of size contributed to their downfall the past season. As the Lakers enter next season, they aim to bolster their center depth. Because of that, they have the Atlanta Hawks center Clint Capela on their board, and pretty high on it. And it's very, being high on the board, their board has a lot of players, right? And they're not going to be just targeting Clint Capela. So I don't want you guys to think that, their only option is going to be Clint Capela and that he's going to be the starting center. Is there a world where Capela's the starting center if they sign him? I mean, there is a world. If they're unable to get a trade that they think is, valid and works well with this team, I still think Dalton Knecht, that 2031 first round pick, both of those picks are going to be, I guess Knecht's not a pick anymore, but he's seen probably as, a late first when it comes to value, maybe a bit better than that. He had an okay year last year for his rookie year, started off hot and then kind of tailed off, wasn't in the playoff rotation. But let's start with Clint Capela. Again, he's only 30 years old, and I think his game is going to age fairly well. He's been in the league for a decade now, and as he ages, and again, this contract's not going to be long, so you probably don't have to worry about that if you're the Lakers, but as his game ages into his late 30s or mid to late 30s, I think he's still going to play well, but right now he's 30 years old. His stats have declined a little bit, and of course, he joined Atlanta to play with Trae Young following playing with Houston, where he was, at his best. But you think back to even the year before last year, he started 73 games for the Hawks, averaged 11 points a game, 5 offensive rebounds a game. Like, he is still a great rebounder, and he's coming off of the worst year of his career since his sophomore year. And that's a good thing, really, in some ways for the Lakers, because they can probably get him for a lot cheaper than they would have been able to. But I also think that, the Hawks were a bit of a disaster. They were, a bit everywhere. DeJounte Murray traded, all these different things. He averaged 8 points, 8 rebounds, essentially. And he's still a very solid defender. He always has been, in 1 block a game, career low in blocks, career low in offensive, rebounds. So it's or I guess since earlier on in his career, not a career low, but he's a very good offensive rebounder who would be able to come in off the bench, and he started to get used to that role. Now, prior to last season, he started almost every game of his career, but last year he only started 41 of the 55 games, so slowly starting to get used to being a bench role. And I mean, he could be a starting center, for the Lakers. I don't think that's the best option. If he ends up being the only option available, sure, it can make some sense, but again, he's 30 years old. You almost think he's older because of how long he's been in the league. And I think it would just make a ton of sense for this Lakers team. I think just given the fact that the way the roster is constructed, adding guys who you can get for fairly cheap, and you're not going to be able to get every center you want. So doing that would be very interesting and would make a ton of sense for me. Let me know down below your thoughts are on that. But shifting focus a little bit here is another center that could also target Kevon Looney using their taxpayer mid-level exception. But if he was going to accept that contract, he'd likely get it from the Golden State Warriors. This one's interesting. So they're also interested in Kevon Looney, albeit a bit less likely because of the fact that he's a long-time Warrior. He's only ever played for the Warriors over the past very long time and for his career. So it's going to be interesting to see there. And look, you can see here Kevon Looney's stats. Now again, he's played for the Warriors for his entire career. Started to fall off a little bit last year. He only started 6 of the 76 games. We saw the Warriors start to go a little bit smaller. Play Draymond Green at the 5 and things like that. 4.5 points, 6 rebounds. Now, he is a hustle player. He has no finesse. He is not really a lob threat, really. Not a great defender. But he'd be able to come in, give you rebounds off of the bench, give you, just energy. And he's similar age to Clint Capela. He's 28 years old. I don't hate this one either. Although, again, I don't think either of these are game-changing moves. I think if you had to pick one, I would pick Clint Capela. Obviously, a bit more, he's played at a higher level in the past in the sense of, just points-wise and things like that. But again, Kevon Looney is a winner. He won a championship with Golden State, of course, multiple times. So he's a very interesting player. But again, I keep circling back to Clint Capela because, no, he hasn't, won a championship recently or anything like that like Kevon Looney has. But at the same time, I think that, again, it's hard to see and envision Kevon Looney leaving the Golden State Warriors, especially for a taxpayer mid-level exception. Like the MLE is probably not going to be something that the Warriors have much trouble giving up in, especially given the fact that he's been a Warrior for his entire career. Whereas Clint Capela, they are available, and he is available, right? He is very available, of course. And I think there's a real chance where he leaves the Hawks. The Hawks aren't clamoring to keep Clint Capela. But let me know down below your thoughts are on that. A couple other things before I wrap up. I just want to touch on some comments from Magic Johnson here. And he says, Pelinka has to improve the roster and they have to improve their defense to win. Great job by Coach JJ Redick to put everyone on notice. They have to be in better condition for them to win an NBA championship. I'm glad Luka listened to JJ. It's great what you did in Dallas, but in Los Angeles, we expect championships. LeBron already did that. Now we want Luka to do the same thing. And he goes on to say, talking about defense and all those different things. We'll have a full video covering this soon as well. But it's interesting because everyone's clamoring, and there's a lot of pressure now on Rob Pelinka to get the job done. Shams come out, Windhorst has come out and said this is going to be the most, the busiest, the most action-packed offseason we've seen maybe ever, but especially in recent memory. And Rob Pelinka, it's a good time because he obviously acquired one of the best point guards in the league, or I guess one of the best guards in the league, depending if you consider Luka a point guard or a point forward. But regardless, he is one of the best players in the league. And if Rob Pelinka doesn't, this is the offseason now for him to prove that, of course, that he's a good GM. People know he's a good GM, but some people say he got kind of spooned the Luka Doncic trade. Prove that you can build a competitive team around Luka Doncic. It starts with the center position. Get an absolute beast at the center position, and then get a guy like Clint Capela as the backup center. It's going to be interesting. He's an unrestricted free agent. But let me know down below what your thoughts are on that. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.